my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, well, I don't wanna jinx it, baby, and twist myself at the spine. Don't wanna overthink it, baby. It's just me, your body, and mine. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, but I don't wanna jinx it, baby. Let's not get ahead of my time. Oh, but I don't wanna miss you, baby. So I stand up and speak my mind. Oh.
And then I go through those holdbacks, and it's usually
Okay, the small one.
Nah, y'all.
You have to put the animals first. Like when you see that, you
Happy Saturday, everyone. We are actually recording this live. This is actually Monday evening, and we are having a very special guest. You guys know whenever it's a Retic person, I am like really pumped to do it, to have that communication, because we get all the ball python talk everywhere all the time. We don't get a lot of good Retic talk with good Retic history. I can't bring you a lot of history other than the history that I know from studying, but this person can bring you some actual factual because they've been doing it. They've been keeping these animals for a very long time, since these animals, very first started being imported into the country, and then bred to have some of the amazing animals we have today. So to no further ado, we're going to bring on our guest, and it is Jake from JK Reptiles. I'll let him formally introduce himself and let you know who he is in the community when we bring him on. Hello.
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for having me.
No, I am super excited. We've been trying to do this, y'all, for some time. The timing now, though, I think is even better. With just like I was saying before, with just some of the things that's currently happening in the reticulated python community, we can say, negative, but I think there's a lot of positive that's come out of a lot of what we recently experienced. So we're going to talk about some of that later, but I want to start with just introducing yourself, Jake, and tell people who you are. A lot of people, if you do reticulated pythons, you know who he is, but a lot of people may not. So,
okay. Well, I'm Jake. I'm 38. I live in the suburbs of Chicago. I'm like right smack in the middle between Tinley and Schaumburg, so it's kind of nice. I've been keeping reptiles forever, since I was a little kid. Married with 2 kids. Got a job that I love. I don't do snakes full time, just a hobby. Yeah, I mean, just a normal guy that just keeps big snakes. That's about it, really.
Which I think that was something amazing that I learned about you with trying to set this up, that you do a lot of the, big NARBC shows, Schaumburg, Tinley, and things like that. A lot, and some traveling to the shows in different areas while working a full-time job. How has that been?
Well, it's a lot. Before I was married with kids, it wasn't that bad. When me and my wife were dating, it was a lot easier. Even when we had our kids and they were babies, it was a lot easier. Now my son is 5, going to be turning 6, and my daughter's 3. So it's a lot. It's a lot right now with the amount of animals I have. I'm actually kind of in the process of slimming down a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm getting rid of half my collection, but I do see myself kind of streamlining a little bit, getting rid of a few projects that I'm just probably not going to see through, or just animals that just don't really fit into where I see like the future of JK Reptiles going. So it's a lot. It's 40 hours. I mean, my job is pretty laid back. I recently got promoted. I'm a director of recreation. So I run a park district. So I do a lot of like right now is our big thing is summer camp. So I run a summer camp for 65 kids from kindergarten to 6th grade. So I do that. I do a lot of special events for seniors and teens, and I build and I design a haunted house every year. It's a pretty easy job. I've been working there since I was in high school. Started as just a normal we call it a recreation leader, and just recently got promoted to director. So been there since 2003, since I was in high school. So it's pretty easy.
That's
job.
awesome. Yeah. So you're still doing something that you love. So that's definitely awesome. And I think I remember you might have been doing an interview before with James, and you talked about, how your career advanced and you still get to work with kids, which is a big part of what you love.
I love it. I mean, I go to work every day, and like tomorrow we go to a pool. We have a big pool we go to, and then Wednesday's our field trip day. I get to go on field trips with these kids. I mean, I love being around kids. I don't know, there's something about hanging out with kids that's just, they're so pure and innocent. It's just with all the craziness in the world. So It's this year's a little special too, because my son is actually in my camp, so I get to literally spend all day with my kid at work, which is phenomenal. So this is a fun year, but yeah, it's like I said, though, it's 40 hours a week doing that. Plus I come home and it's probably about 30 something hours a week doing snakes at least. It ends up being a lot. So.
And how old is your son now? Because I remember for a long time, you didn't even, correct me if I'm wrong, he would be in the reptile room. He enough to actually hands-on help you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be 6. So, I mean, obviously.
I think I kind of remember him being very, very young.
Yeah. I got him down here like as soon as I could. I have pictures of him coming with me to NARBC when he was probably 3 months old, 4 months old, I remember. So he's been around it. He likes them. He's a big animal lover. My daughter is too. But my son's, he's lately getting really into spiders. Like he's really into like the insects, tarantulas, and he really wants a tarantula. That's like his thing. But my wife is definitely afraid of tarantulas. So I don't know if we'll be doing that. But yeah, we got a clutch of eggs due to hatch in 2 weeks, and he's been bugging me. Dad, can we cut the eggs? I'm like, we gotta wait. They're not ready yet. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I look at it like, I'm not going to push him. If he doesn't want to be involved, he doesn't want to be involved. But it's one of those things where I want him to be exposed as much as possible. Same thing with my daughter. She's a little more timid of the snakes than he was, but I just want to get them at least out there so they know, like down the road, snakes are evil, and they can kind of educate people. And they're not that bad at all. They're awesome animals. So yeah.
So with that, talk a little bit about your history with reptiles in general, and then how did the reticulated python become the specialty?
Yeah, so I've always been an animal person. I mean, I could go back as far as I can remember, 5-6 years old. My parents used to rehab animals, kind of like that was my mom mainly. So we would end up with all sorts of crazy stuff: possums, squirrels, raccoons, birds, like babies that were orphaned by their moms. So like me and my sisters and my mom would orphan. So we always had weird stuff, but I was always into dinosaurs. Dinosaurs was like my thing as a kid. Obviously you can't go buy a dinosaur. So obviously next best thing, you know, big giant snakes, big giant lizards. I'm a big guy. I like I like big snakes. I like big lizards. I got a Great Dane dog puppy. He's almost 2. So it's like I like everything big, right? So so it was only a natural thing. You know, I started off catching garter snakes and green snakes, fox snakes, all the local stuff, turtles, frogs. We'd bring them back to my house, and I'd keep them, you know, in our basement in aquariums for a few weeks, and then I'd let them go and go catch more.
Okay.
Ended up, a friend of a friend, well, it was a friend of my cousin. I was probably like 10 or 11 at the time, and my cousin was 15, 16, and it was actually her friend's boyfriend, but he worked at an animal warehouse. So basically the animals that would come in and go to like the pet stores and stuff. And he was able to get me a albino Burmese python. So at the time, I think they were like $100. So I remember all summer busting my butt, cutting lawns and stuff, going to random people's houses to cut lawns and save up enough for a berm, which I got it. It was cool, but it was infested with mice. I didn't know what I was doing. The internet was just kind of starting, so there wasn't a ton of information.
Right.
You know, I have all these old books that are like paper thin with like terrible information. I still have them. But yeah, the snake just wasn't very active. It just didn't really do much, and I was just very bored with it. I'm like, this kind of stinks. Like, I thought it would be more active and stuff. So kind of did a lot of reading on retics, and I heard how crazy they were and just how big they got. And then I'm not far from Brian Potter's shop, the Chicago Reptile House. That's 25 minutes from me. Okay. So anytime we would go out to the mall, there's a big shopping center right by his shop. And me and my mom, whatever, we'd always have to stop every time. Go in there one time, he had some baby retics. First time I've ever seen a retic, held a retic, and I was tripping out seeing these things. They were the coolest snakes, and they were babies, and they were 24 inches long. They were big, giant babies, and I couldn't believe that they were. I think they were like a month old or something. They were tiny, or they were big, but they were young. Yeah, I just will never forget that. It was the coolest thing. I'm like, that's my next snake. So, 14, I'm doing work. My dad cuts down trees. That's what he did. So he had a side business. So I would always help him. Busted butt again. Saved up my money. Ended up buying a tiger retic from Brian at the Reptile House, and that was my first retic. I think it's like 14, in between 14 and 15. It was somewhere in 99. So that was like kind of the start of the morph craze. Back then, there wasn't much. I think there was tigers, maybe super tigers at the time.
Okay.
And I don't even think albinos were not even like produced. There was an albino. Bob had the original albino, but he didn't prove it out yet. So it was only, I think there was calicos and just some other random stuff. But yeah, that was my first retic ever. So
wow. And then is that retic a part of your starting breeding stock? I never bred that snake. Okay. So this was, like I said, so 14, 15, got that snake. And I was working for my dad every weekend. And I mean, as a 14-year-old kid, I was making like $10, $12 an hour cash. So I mean, I had money, I was making decent money at the time. So we'd always go to the little local reptiles show that was called Lee Watson's Reptile Show here in, I forget where it was at the time, Wheaton or something like that. They had everything: alligators, snapping turtles, bird. It was the coolest thing ever. So bought a few more retics, just low end stuff, another tiger, some really pretty normals, whatever. About 18, I started getting into the car scene and kind of like, the snakes are cool, but I only have limited money, and I wanted to suit my car up and do that. So I sold my snakes. I think I had like 8 or 9 at the time. Sold my snakes, got into the car scene, and did that for a couple years, and then
got back into the snakes like 21. But I always followed it. I was always on all the back then. There was all the forums. You know, there was Bob Clark had his own forum. Mike Wilbanks had his own. Kevin had his own. There was King Snake. There was all these forums. This was before Facebook.
And then the magazine. What was it? The Reptile.
There was Reptiles magazine, and there was the Vivarium. Were the two big magazines. Yeah. So yeah, I did that, and then at 21, my parents moved out of state, so I was living on my own, and I'm like, you know what? Now's the time. I'm gonna get my own. I'm gonna get another snake.
Okay.
So bought another tiger randomly from Brian at the Reptile House, and then it just snowballed from there. Then it just bought more and more and more and more, and it's been ever since. That was 2000. I don't remember what year it was, 2000 something, but it's been nonstop Retic since. So.
And do you keep? I mean, I know you talked about the lizards. Do you keep any other snakes other than the Retics?
Nope, just Retics. I had just the Retics and the one monitor. I'm debating what I'm doing, if I'm going to get another monitor or I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet with the monitor. So they're cool. They're fun. They're a lot of work. I knew they were getting into it, and it's, I don't know. He's awesome. He's super cool, but he's not as friendly as I was hoping. I don't think I spent enough time with him,
Right.
And again, it's hard. I have so much going on right now that it's hard to dedicate as much time as I wish I could to him. So maybe slim my snakes down and I'll have a little more time, or, I don't know. We'll see.
It's unfortunately for me, one of the animals other than my Rottweiler that I'm just not comfortable with having around my snakes, right? So it's not like you can do them both. Like,
right.
Okay, come on, I'm have the water monitor out and the Retics.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just that, like I was out, my monitor was doing really good for a while. And then I went out of town for a week. So, and then when I came back, he was just like freaking out, wanting nothing to do with me. So it's like just any little thing sets him back so much. So you have to be consistent with them. And that's my issue, is I just don't have enough consistency right now with everything else going on in my life. So he's not bad. I can get him out. It's just getting him out just sucks. And then once he's out, he's super mellow and chill. Yeah. But he's getting to the point where he's right here. He's somewhere in his cage right here. But he or she is about ready to do for an upgrade. So it's kind of debating if I'm going to keep her, build a bigger enclosure for her, or I got to see. I got a buddy that might want her, so I may let him take her and raise her and, maybe breed her down the road, and then I could still get a baby or something from him eventually. So we'll see. But
got you. So I want to I'm going to jump here and then come back to the next one. Who was your greatest mentor, if any? Because back then you probably only had like Bob Clark. I mean, it wasn't that much, and Kevin. It wasn't that many people doing Retics that much back then.
So I don't know if you're familiar with, you ever hear of Jason Gaspar? Ever hear of them?
I just recently heard that name in a Patreon somewhere.
Okay, so Jim Gaspar, that's Jason Gaspar's dad. Jim passed away many, many years ago. I want to say it was a brain tumor or something like that. But back in the day, right, we used to have there was it was called the Mini Retic mailing group. So it was kind of like a forum, but you would respond through email, and it would kind of be the same. You'd have a thread and all this stuff, right? Okay. So this was, again, I'm 14 years old or 15 years old at the time, and I'm in there, and there's Jim Gaspar. There's tons of people in there. I don't know if there's anybody that I still communicate that was in there, maybe. But, I was this 14-year-old kid talking about how I want a whole bunch of Retics. I'm going to breed them. I'm going to be the next Bob Clark, this and that, and I'm going to be a big name in the Retic world. And man, people just, they did not like that. They talked down to me. I mean, they were very mean to me. I'm not going to lie. As a 14, 15-year-old kid, they were very mean to me. Jim was on there, and me and Jim talked, and he would message me and email me on the side. And, he's like, you're going about it the wrong way. You're being very cocky and arrogant. These animals demand respect. Just the whole deal, right? Give me the whole rundown. And at this point, he bred them a few times, and was pretty much, he was known in the Retic world, for as small as it was back then. But he helped me a ton. I mean, I can't even put into words how much he's helped me, breeding advice, any little issue with my animals. I would email him or call him and been over to his place. I mean, that was going to Jim's house. So Jim lived in Indiana. Jim and Jason live in Indiana. So Not too far, hour and a half from me. So going to gyms, the first time I was there, that was the first time I've ever seen like a legit big retic breeding operation. I mean, I had 2 or 3 snakes, and a couple buddies had 1 or 2 here or there. This was like you go in the basement, and it's floor to ceiling, wall to wall of giant vision cages with humongous retics. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen that picture of me holding that giant Jampea on my shoulder, me and my buddy. It's the Jamp is like this big. That was the first time I was at Jim's house. Okay. So, I mean, he had 18-foot Jamps. He had this giant, like a true 20-foot plus tiger retic. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen. But yeah, Jim, there's so much I could tell you about Jim. He was the nicest guy. I don't know. I miss him so much. I was there for his, like, they did a memorial and stuff for him in his funeral and all that. He was the greatest dude. I mean, he sold a lot of wholesale stuff to, I think, Kevin and Bob and stuff like that. He was wasn't a showboater, didn't really post, oh, look at my world first this or that, or check out this cool snake. Very behind the scenes, just great, just an unbelievable dude. Like I said, I miss him dearly. So.
And again, 2 things you just touched on, and I want to talk about that because, and I think I shared this with you before. For a long time, it wasn't not just Retic Nation, any of the Retic groups.
Yeah.
But I don't think my experience was more of just mean people. I felt 2 things. And you can speak to this because you've been here, you see it from both sides. First of all, I didn't even know that you were an admin of Retic Nation until 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So like you were somebody I'm following and all that. I could have been asked you this question.
Yeah.
But when I first started doing the retics, and let me just kind of explain a little bit of history of not just when I started doing them, but the why I wanted to do them differently. So it kind of goes to what you said. Jim may have said to you, I think a lot of people felt when I first came in as a new keeper, and understandably, I don't knock people for how they felt when they first start, right? You don't see me because I didn't do social media until like 3 years ago, other than, my personal.
Right.
And then, I came out with, and this is my thing, and it's going to always be my thing. I wanted to show people that the animal that I was kept away from for so long, because this is how I feel, because everybody that was visual with them made them seem like they were these unmanageable animals. And I get like they're better now than they was 20 years ago. I get that. Yeah. But even when I'll say 7 years ago, when I said to my husband, I think I'm going to move to get the reticulated pythons, because I read, it was a book from, his name is, oh my God, he's going to kill me. It's going to come to me. But it's a book, Sid James.
Sid, yeah. That book, I got that book sitting somewhere right here. Yeah.
So that was one of the first books that I had read, and it talked about the morphs. It talked about the husbandry a little bit, but it talked a whole lot about the mindset of the animals. I felt like, okay, so if this animal is this intelligent, right? I'm going to treat it like it's that intelligent. Yeah. And so the first 3 I got were back to back. They were literally, the first 2 were a month apart, and then the third one probably was an additional month. So that raised them 3 up at the same time.
Yep.
And let me tell you what it was. It was the day that I was soaking the golden child, and I saw her come out of her tub and go back to her enclosure. And I said to myself, oh my God, I still have that recording. And I said to myself, so 2 things she did. She moved her furniture around one night, because I was like, I know damn well I put the hides here, the here. And this was a younger, like she was like 3 months old.
Oh.
And then she moved stuff around, and then she also did that. I'm like, these things are way smarter than even I think they are, babe. So I started taking that approach with them while they were young. Then I'm going to start handling them, watching them, seeing what they would do younger to create a better adult in my head. This is without, I couldn't find information like as far as a lot of husbandry for reticulated pythons on YouTube. And that was, you know, YouTube was a go-to for a lot of stuff. I was familiar with ball pythons because I raised them all my life. Like ball pythons were my snake. This thing wasn't a ball python by
totally different animal.
by far. And then I remember, thank God for the breeder, which was Jim Jolly, explaining the food response. Because he kind of like, when we talked about it, I gave him like, I studied them for years. Like it wasn't something that I'm just going to do.
Right.
I studied them for years. I was comfortable with everything except for this food response that everybody talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And they all had it. Don't get me wrong. When they were younger, they all had it, but it wasn't hard to turn off either.
Right.
So now I have all of these adults, and I say to people, one of the things that a friend said to me about a year ago, when you talk about the cockiness, I feel like some of what you said, some people felt about me as well. And it wasn't a cocky thing. It was a confidence thing for me.
Yeah.
I raised them up as babies. I won't come to your house and handle your reticulated pythons this way. That's
right.
just a fact.
They're, like you said, they're your babies.
They're my babies. So what somebody said to me, and I think it was a good point. Just like you were looking for videos on YouTube, you have to always start it off with, I raised these babies from 3 months, 2 months old. And this is not the experience that you may have with every reticulated python, so that people wouldn't do anything like, you know, somebody wouldn't get a retic and think they could just go in and touch them. You know what I mean?
Well, that's one of the issues why I think I'm very much for like buying babies, right? I have a lot of snakes, and I probably have 2 or 3 that I didn't buy as babies. I mean, I've raised pretty much everything in this basement right now. There, like I said, there's my bat eater I did not get as a baby, and I have a big tiger double head purple anthrax that I did not get as a baby. Pretty much everything else was from baby. I mean, little babies, right? Not even like youngsters. So that's the one thing I preach to a lot of people. That was something Jim preached to me, which I didn't touch on. Jim was very against, because at the time when me and Jim were getting like really close, when his sickness was really starting to take over, was kind of like the big boom in the retics. The morph craze was just going nuts. There was a lot. It was at the time when a lot of people were buying every adult you could buy, and they're going to try to breed them and make $1 million and stuff like that. And that was one thing Jim, from when I was 14, always was like, buy a baby, raise it up. You learn with the animal. Every snake's different, especially retic, right? No 2 retics are the same.
I tell people that all the time. I have all these, and none of them are the same.
They're all individuals, so you're gonna grow with that animal. So that's always been my mindset. Is granted, I can go buy an adult from somebody or get a big wild caught animal, and I've had wild caughts too, and deal with them. But I don't want to. I don't like to do that. I like to build that bond from that baby and raise that up myself. You know, it's a lot more time and energy and money, but I don't know. I've always been that way. I'd much rather raise a baby for myself than get an adult, you know. So I don't know if that's because that's what Jim kind of pumped into my head for a long time, you know, don't get an adult, don't do that, you're going to crash and burn, you're not going to like it, blah, blah, blah. And it's just something that I've always stuck by that, you know. So it's
so I can't imagine it any other way for me, right? Because I think what makes it easier, because people think it's like some magical thing that I do here, what makes it easier is because what you said, these babies was raised with me, so we grew up together, kind of like they got to know me, I know them, and they help me. Like they know where I'm weak. My son will come and get them, and they know that Michael can lift them much easier than I can. When it's me, it's almost like they come and they like, let me bring this part of my body over here so you can help me get the rest of you up. It's so many things that I've experienced, I think, differently from others, because all of mine I raised up from babies. I didn't get a 1-year-old from anyone, or a 2-year-old, 3-year-old. They were 2 months in. Here they are 4 years later, 3 years later, the animals that I have. And I think that makes a big difference. So speaking with that, when it comes to the question that I have, because for the record, I'm going to always be a mainland girl. I have no interest in super dwarfs, and no, I have a dwarf, which is a beautiful snake.
Yeah.
Beautiful. But I will tell you, the bigger snakes are easier than the dwarf. It's even when it comes to the full response. Like literally with the dwarf, you better put the hook in there before you even slide it back.
See, I think some of that, you know, so I had some super dwarfs back many years ago, like first generation captive born stuff, and they weren't bad. They weren't like mean or bitey, but man, were they flighty. They would just try to go. I mean, even those jamps, like I said, those big jam pads when I was over at Jim's, I mean, those were like 18 feet, and they moved like a super dwarf or a dwarf. I mean, they were a handful. Now I don't know if that's so much. I'm wondering if that's just because there's still not as many generations bred as a lot of the mainland stuff, or is that just something naturally instilled in them because they are a smaller animal from a smaller islands? You know, like they need to eat all the time because you don't know when you're going to get food next. Whereas these big mainlands, you know, they can take down a deer or whatever they're going to eat, right? So their food's more readily available for these bigger animals. Even in captivity, is that something that's just still instilled in their DNA? Like, hey, we got to eat. We got to go get this bird or whatever we're trying to eat, you know, as quick as possible. I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of both too. But I'm with you. I mean, I'm 100% mainland guy. I mean, yes, I do agree. I think the dwarfs and the super dwarf stuff is cool. The combos, some of the stuff that these guys are doing, like Eric Lee is like the GOAT for the dwarf, super dwarf stuff. That dude is making some of the coolest snakes I've ever seen. But my personal opinion, I got retics again. I like big. The bigger, the better, right? So that's what drew me to retics. Now, if it was more dwarf, super dwarf oriented when I got into it, I don't know if I would do retics because that was part of the allure to me, right? These giant 150, 200 pound snakes that could get 20 plus feet and just the quote unquote man eaters, you know, like that was, I don't know, that was always something that just drew me to them. It's I don't know if I'll get into them. And that's one thing I keep going back and forth on, like market wise, as far as like breeding. I mean, because I do breed and I do want to make somewhat of an income in to pay for my stuff, right? Like that's where the market's going. But I kind of feel like I'm like getting away from my roots, you know, kind of like that's just not me. Then I feel like I'm doing it for the money aspect, which I've never been about. So it's kind of one of those, it's like a double-edged sword. Like, do you go that way or not? But
yeah, well, I can tell you, even for me, technically, I never really wanted to breed the retics, right? When I first got them, I did, and then after, like, I think 2 years in, that's when my mind switched. Like, how many people can keep these animals the way they should be kept to keep them mentally and physically healthy? And so then my mindset shifted. But I'm gonna be honest, having this clutch, like
very cool clutch, by the way, too.
Thank you.
Beautiful clutch. I saw it. They're very nice.
I just, first of all, couldn't believe, like, so they did it themselves. So everybody talks about how hard it would be to breed retics. Well, apparently it's not that hard if they know when their time is, because literally, and I've learned, this was a learning experience for me. You know, I let them commune around each other all the time. So I had no idea that the male was definitely showing signs that he was ready, right? He was doing a little arching and stuff like that. But this day he wasn't even arching. And then she's up there just sitting there looking pretty. And he goes up there, and I swear, Jake, it was less than a minute. And then they were locked. It was just, ball pythons don't do it that fast. Like,
she must have been peak cycle at that point. You know, he knew. I mean, they pick up on it. They pick up on it very fast.
So I turned to my husband and I said, "Oh my God, babe, they locked." And we wasn't going to unlock them because that was something that I didn't think that was going to go right. So I was like, well, we're not unlocking them at this point. And I say to him, I was like, well, now we know that they're both cycling. After they're done, we won't let them go back together. And I said, she won't get pregnant. People say it's so hard to retics. And this is in right before we went to San Diego. So that was in October.
Okay.
So I think it was like in November. You can clearly see that she was ovulating. And
Getting
I'm
all
like,
massive and huge. And
I mean, huge. You could
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
I'm like, babe, no way. And I think I reached out to Jim. I took a picture. I'm like, they only lied once. Is it possible? He was like, she is gravid. Like, he was like, no doubt.
When they ovulate too, it's wild. Like, it's like I've caught some that are like maybe tail end or beginning of, and they're big. But when you catch a full on mid ovulation,
it was clear.
It's unreal how big they get. My bat eater, the one time when she was gravid, and I didn't know she was gravid, and I put males in, never saw a lot. She kind of stopped eating, which I was like, weird. She was a really good eater, and maybe something's off. Never did I think, oh, she's possibly gravid. Then she went through a shed. I'm like, well, maybe. And she shed, and when I came downstairs and I looked in her cage and I saw how big she was, I couldn't believe. I have pictures somewhere on one of my. That snake it literally looked like she swallowed like a beach ball. I was like, how are you not splitting open? You're so swollen.
And the scales, like, this is this dark snake. She started to silver in certain spaces. Her stomach was so big.
Yeah.
And she went, and we had the babies. Beautiful clutch, like you said.
Beautiful.
Love the birth of reticulated pythons. And I keep saying, compared to like my experiences with the ball python clutches, it's like nothing can compare. Like even them coming out the eggs, it was like, I'm here.
Yeah. They're like little dinosaurs. I mean, they're just little. I don't know. Baby retics are the coolest thing ever. Like I love catching little baby retics. They have so much.
But it comes to the reality of we can't breed them. We can't breed them. That's one fact that has come out of all of this.
Yeah.
Like even now, good thing I'm a person who's patient. I will say that I've learned through breeding that there are way more people who keep these animals who are just kind of like in the shade. They don't want all of the exposure and all of that, but they really good keepers of these animals. So I did get to see a different side of the market through breeding. But I still feel that there's a lot of animals that a breeder had to say to me the other day, Nicole, you're going to sell an animal and it's going to die. You just got to accept that. And I'm like, no, I can't accept that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't accept that people will just let them die.
It's so bad. It's hard. It's a hard thing to sell. I mean, it's as much as, you love these animals. I love these animals. It's very hard to think about the potential of where they're going and what's going to happen to them. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people I know try to screen their buyers. Like I've turned away sales at shows before because I didn't think that those people were ready. But I'm also the type of person where you come to me, talk to me, show me you're educated and you're looking to buy your first retic, and you know what you're getting, right? You're getting a mainland retic, what it's possibly capable of, how big it's going to get, the requirement, all that stuff. I'll sell you, and I talk to people like every day that I've sold snakes to that are asking me questions and need help or advice or, hey, what should I do with this? I've always been very open with my communication. Even with people that don't buy from me, it does get annoying when I get a lot of emails and phone calls and texts from people that are, talking to me about an animal, but then they'll go buy from somebody else for $100 cheaper, but then that person won't give them help. But that's a whole nother story.
Right.
But I mean, it's, I would much rather somebody, I mean, I've sold to one of the, I don't know, it's probably one of the last shows, younger kid, 17, came up to me. We talked a lot. He came back and forth, talked to me numerous times at the table. And he was very educated on retics. He knew all about him, right? We talked about getting one and if he's going to college, like what's going to happen, the whole deal, right? You can't leave the snake with your parents, and he's ended up not going to college. He's already local. He's going to stay local. So dad came up, me and his dad talked a lot, and kind of he knew what he was getting and stuff. And I told him, like, I'll sell you one. I'm like, you ever have any issues or it ever gets to be too much, you let me know. And it was like a cheaper, just a tiger, nothing crazy. It was a low-end animal, but I'm like, if it ever becomes too much, I will take it back, or I will try to place it into a home that's more suited for it. And I get updated pictures from it. The thing is thriving. It's big. The kid loves it. And he knows his limit. Like because he was telling me how he wants to breed retics and he wants to do this and that. And he told me, he's like, I don't know if I want to breed retics anymore. He's like, I kind of think I might just want to keep a couple. So, I mean, that made me feel good. Like, not that I don't want to encourage people to breed, but I told him, like, breeding them's a lot. The sales is a lot. Marketing's a lot. Dealing with customers, multiple. I mean, it is an avalanche of stuff that you have to deal with. So,
and the mental anguish, because like I said, when I sell a ball python, I'm not saying that people won't kill ball pythons too, but I have less of a worry. You can rehome a ball python easier than you can a reticulated python.
Yeah.
But where do you think that's going? So I know for me, and I talked to this with my husband about this. I definitely don't know. I definitely don't want to breed them every year. I definitely want to breed them selectively. I think that eventually down the line, I do want to breed the pod. But I can definitely say that if we're being honest, right? How can we regulate, if at all? Like, it's just as breeders, you know, one of the things that I see that the Retic Nation is doing now, and it may have always been doing it. I just, you know, I'm in the audience. I'm not in the background, but it's doing now is you seeing so more educational posts and awareness posts, you know, not just keeping people cognizant of the right thing we need to do about these animals. Even from a breeding perspective, like maybe the powers to be, and when I say that, I think first of all, somebody needs to work with Wolf Market, because I'm gonna tell you my experience, right?
Okay.
As a new breeder, other than the breeder himself. So let's say if I didn't have the breeder himself, if I didn't have Bob Clark's, because my babies are descendants from his
Bob stuff.
Yeah, so that's how I was able to identify some of the things that in this clutch, no one knew exactly what it was. You know, it was like, well, this could be a super motley, this could be a motley sunfire, but normally when this comes together, it makes the black snake. Like I have a motley golden child sunfire. But it was like so many things people were just not sure of. But when it comes to ball pythons, the morph market calculator works for the most part. I can tell you that with this particular clutch I had, the morph market calculator was 95% correct, but it was someone in the Retic Nation who reached out to me, which was a really nice guy. Like, we had a really good conversation about the hat. So the mom was sold to me 66% had albino and 50% had mocha, right?
Okay.
And then, of course, you know that the mocha and the albino sits on the same allele, and all of that, right? But if you put it in the morph market calculator, right, it doesn't. It still gives you those 66% and 50%, which in my particular case, because of the white phase albinos that I produced, we knew at that particular time that mom and dad were 100% albino, right? That whole thing was so confusing. So I feel like there's not enough, first of all, information out there to help new breeders, new keepers too, because you don't have to breed to want to be ingrained in your genetics. And what's out there is not all the way correct.
It's the calculator is kind of goofy. I mean, I remember I talked to John about it when John was still owner of Morph Market. They have a lot of weird, they have stuff that's like not even in the States. Like, they just have weird morphs, and the way the stuff, when you put in the calculator, it doesn't add up right, and it just doesn't work right. I mean, I don't know. I think that's just an issue on their end, and I've reached out, I've talked to Darian about a lot of, obviously, the stuff with him and Bob and whatever. And I talked to John too about stuff, and I offer, and I've said, anytime you guys need help, I'll help you. I don't know everything, so I'm like, but I will tell you and help you with everything I know. But it definitely needs some work for sure. Because even there's sometimes where I'll know the combos, but I'm curious. I get messed up with the the odds, the 1 in 64 or whatever. So I'm just curious, what's my chance of making this or this? So I'll type it in, and then there'll be times where I'm like, what the heck? Why is this? This doesn't make any sense. Like, the morphs aren't adding up, and I don't know. I don't know who did that, but they definitely need it. That definitely needs an overhaul for sure, or at least somewhat of a run through to kind of figure out what's not working or how do they fix it or adjust it.
Right, or simplify it,
or simplify it, right?
Right, because I actually we screenshotted one of yours, and you had one of yours. You had albino or mocha, something like that, right?
Yep.
So when I went back there and I reworded all of mine to say the or if it wasn't a visual modeling machine or something like that. But literally, if it wasn't for that person reaching out and like having that, like we literally had a conversation. Like the man did a Punnett square for me, like literally on
that's awesome.
Yeah, like
that's
we're
awesome.
like going and on and on and on. And I learned so much from that experience and I said to him, I was like, you know what? I wish I was comfortable enough to present this, right? With the Punnett square, right? I am now. I can explain it to you. I can explain it. Like I can explain it to a customer that you know. I now know that mom is 100% white face albino, because of the parent to dad and all of that. But I would love to see more information out there, because I think if we talk about education and reforming the reticulated python community, if more education was out there, even down to saying a video, if you think you're going to get rich off of breeding reticulated pythons, you know what I'm saying? Like,
not unless you're Aubrey. Not unless you're Aubrey Pruitt, then maybe you will.
Right.
If you're Aubrey Pruitt, maybe you will.
Let me tell you the funniest joke. About a couple of weeks, I was talking to Aubrey, and he was saying that he was letting go some of his stuff, right? So I said, well, let me go on Wolf Market. I'm going to look up an ocelot. I closed it real fast. I said,
it's crazy. Yeah, that dude's making some insane stuff. So
I mean, but again.
But you're right, though. I mean, and I can only speak for myself, right? So I know we were talking about the education. So I think for me, in this climate we're in now with the Retics, it's hard for me to be like, hey, this is how I set up my Retic and show a video, because everybody is so gung-ho. You need giant cages for them and this and that, which, hey, if I had the space and the money, I would put everything in giant rooms. But then you get the excuse, oh, well, then you have too many snakes. But I'm a breeder. I breed them, right? That's what I do. I breed them and sell them. I've been raising Retics for 20 plus years, and I've only had 1 or 2 animals die, and it was nothing from their caging. It was heart issues, and I don't feed my animals. It's nothing from my caging. My animals get out, they stretch out. I let them cruise around when I clean. Is it the best? Is it a zoo type enclosure? No, but 95% of the people can't do a zoo type enclosure. And if we're only going to limit those type of people to that can own these animals, then why not berms? Why not scrub pythons? Why not all the monitors?
Why not carpet?
There's so many things. Like, you cannot just say Retics need giant rooms, because I don't buy it. I just don't believe it.
I can tell you, it's not my experience. So when you talk about all of them have different personalities, I have some that's housed truly on their personality. So there is one Retic who is in this massive enclosure. And when I say massive, not in a room, it's a 10-footer, right? Yeah. It's like a 10 by 3 by 3. And that's because she was my first Retic, right? And then, and I didn't, I'm assuming she's going to need all this space, and she does do a lot of more climbing than the others. But I have Retics who, I have one. My Motley Tiger had purple. You can open her doors like I open all the rest of them, and everybody else come on. She'll even come to like the edge, sit there, and watch everything y'all doing, watch them go past her and everything. Never come out. Now, if you got to take her out, she'll come out. She's good with all of that. Yeah. But she's not one who wants to come out. She's also not one that you're going to see surfing around. Like, for whatever reason, she's just like a chill. So
they're all different. They're all different.
All different.
Did you see, you know Travis Warren, right?
Yep.
You know who Trev? So did you see? He put a video up, I don't know, a few weeks back, and he was kind of doing a room walkthrough, and it was a great video because he was showing he had a retic in an aquarium, and the retic was curled up on one side, and he said, I put the snake in a 4-footer, it pushes, or it does this, or it destroys its face. I put it in this cage and it does this. I put it in the aquarium, it chills, it eats, it doesn't destroy its face. So it's like, how can you sit here now? You put that snake in a room, what's going to happen? So it's like,
I can tell you, I have retics that I put in a room. 1 might be fine, 2 might be fine, but they're going to hurt themselves, because that's another thing people don't think about. When you put them in it more open space, it's like when we have them roam in the house. Yeah. It's good for stretch out. It's good for them to be all over the place, but you got to watch what they're doing so they don't hurt themselves. Like pull something down on their bodies and stuff like that. So I think that that's my thing. Is I think that what you say is more important. Let them get the exercise that they need, but then there's going to be like this one who, for whatever reason, she doesn't need exercise. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I also think feeding too. Like I think the feeding with your cage sizing kind of goes hand in hand, right? I'm very vocal about the fact that I'm not a small meal guy. I feed my retics big, giant, huge meals. But like my big females, they'll only eat a handful of times a year. So they're not constantly digesting food. They get their cage clean, they come out. A lot of my snake, I mean, I have a few that are a little on the heavy side, but a lot of my retics are really long and lean. Like you would think that they're borderline like malnourished almost, like they're so skinny. But you look at a lot of these wild caught retics that they, you know, if you look at any of the guys that post from Indonesia, a lot of these retics are lean. They're not big, giant, fat animals. They've never been like that. It's, you know, you got certain breeders that post videos and stuff with these insanely grossly overweight snakes, and those are that's the issue. I don't know. It's like you say one thing, you're going to get in trouble, or if you say it's a hard thing. So that's kind of where I don't know. I don't want to post stuff like that educationally. I'd love to. I have so much stuff I could talk about and do videos on, and I mean, I think it would be great for people to see. But it's like I'm gonna get you know, a bunch of crap for it if I do. So
but
it's a hard thing.
That way in the retic community, because it's not that way in the ball python community. People keep 1,000 different ways. No one agrees on how to keep and everything. Because honestly, I can tell you that out of all the videos that I've watched over the times, I have never looked at a video other than like, I don't believe in making retics overly obese. I don't believe in that, but that's your animal and that's what you're doing. And that's the lifespan you're giving your animal. I want mine to be able to live as long as they possibly can and have healthy lives. But I will say this, I wish the community would get away from that, because you see in the nation, for example, there's so much education there, right? That is not openly exposed, which is to a detriment to people who do want to keep these animals. You talk about the 17-year-old that you sold the snake to. I'm glad that Jim Jolly didn't say to me, well, you never had a retic, you know, so I'm not going to sell them to you, right? I do believe that there are people who are going to show interest in these animals, who are going to be great keepers of them. If you're committed to them, it's almost like no choice. When you're passionate about them, you love them so much, they're like your kids. You want to.
And if you know, somebody comes up and says, "Oh, I want a retic," blah blah blah, and I tell them, "Oh, well, you shouldn't get one. You've never owned one, or you don't know anything about them. Go get a ball python." They're going to get this ball python or whatever, and they're not going to be into it because it's not what they want. I would much rather, I mean, and I think about myself too. What if Jim Gaspar told me, "Hey, kid, you shouldn't keep retics," or didn't help me? I probably wouldn't even be sitting here today talking to you. I probably would be like, screw these snakes. You know, I don't want nothing to do with them. Right. But I mean, you got to give people a chance, and I'm very open to like mentoring, right? You got to mentor these people. And
you have to.
And a lot of the thing too is and it's across all the communities from what I've heard is a lot of the new keepers come in and they're very vocal about what's wrong and right. And they attack the older guys, you know, and I'm not perfect. And I've done things that I'm sure are not the best. And, you know, I've been doing it 20 something years though. And my track record speaks for itself. I've been around forever, and my animals are healthy. My snakes are wonderful. Anybody could come to my house and look at my animals, and you're going to see they're in great shape. So they're not going to be in great shape if I don't take care of them, right? So I just don't understand the thing. Everyone's pushing for this like complete overhaul of, reptile keeping, retic in general.
Right.
But it's just, where do you draw the line, right? It's like everyone's got to have these giant zoo enclosures, or just educate people on other aspects of their keeping, I think, or just try not to mass produce them to the point where anybody can get them,
Right.
and nobody wants to help. And I think that too. A lot of people are just about the money. They just want to sell their snakes, and they're not about the sale, or they're just, here's a breeding package, buy this package, and then never talk to them again. Nobody wants to follow up with that. Not nobody, but a lot of people don't want to follow up with that, like mentorship or whatever, which is what's needed. That's what's needed. Is help.
Fair.
Absolutely. Right. You're dealing with the longest species of snake in the world. Like, it's not a hard animal to keep, but it's also not an easy animal to keep. They push like crazy. Some do have insane feeding responses, which, and they could seriously hurt you. So you need education. And
and even like in the anatomy of it, like I think that was like, for me, one of the things that I studied before, like the anatomy of it, and to understand the rows of teeth, like my son Michael is amazing with them, but Michael, being a child with special needs, adult with special needs, he has formed such bonds with them that I have to constantly remind him, Michael, still remember they are apex predators. Like I have to say that to him over and over and over again, because in our great relationships with them, we still don't want to be so overly confident that,
it's still a wild animal. At the end of the day, no matter how many generations of captive breeding, it's still, like you said, it's an apex predator. It's a wild animal. I mean, I don't let my kid, well, I shouldn't say I don't, but I try to keep my kids away from my dog's face as much as possible. And he's a sweetie. But it only takes one time that dog gets upset about something and bites you in the face. It's a big giant dog. Same thing with a big giant snake. It takes that one time that animal's having a bad day. You push it a little too far, and the animal hurts you. So and that's the one time that we're going to hear about it, and it's going to be all over the news and the media, and so it's the respect for these animals is huge. It's almost like handling a gun in a way, right? Or a venomous snake. It's it can be dangerous if not respected.
Absolutely. And I also use the gun, and we use it as a guide all the time. Like, as far as rules and regulations, you get a gun, you got rules, you got regulations. When you can do this and you can't do that. It's the exact same mindset.
Absolutely.
We talk about policing ourselves. First, going back to the Cajun, I wish that is not such a I think problem with that is that one of the bigger influencers of the hobby has made that a big topic lately. Although they didn't always keep theirs in big cages.
Right.
And sometimes when that happens, and you talk about the new generation is, everybody knows they drive me crazy. Like I can't take all the screaming all the time like that. Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
But millennials, very specifically, are innovators. So it is. I do think we have to come together. Like the two minds have to come together with a better way of thinking.
Absolutely.
But I don't think the answer is for every retic. I can tell you, for every last one of mine's, bigger cages is not the answer.
No, I mean, again, in a perfect world, if I won the lottery and had hundreds of millions of dollars, yes, I'd go build giant enclosures with trees and the whole deal. And, I probably wouldn't even breed them then at that point. I would just keep them. I don't need to breed them because I could buy literally anything I want. So, but again, I'm a breeder, right? So I need it as sterile and as clean and orderly as I possibly can, So, and I mean, I am getting to the point where I'm not trying to. I mean, I never really produced a ton of clutches. I think my biggust year ever was like 5 clutches of retics, or 5 or 6.
I can't even imagine that.
And I will never do that again. That was the worst time in my life. Like I was dreading coming down here and cleaning, because you got 100, and this was within 3 months of each other. So I had 150, 200 babies, like fresh babies, and constantly flipping water bowls and destroying. And it's like, what am I doing with my life? Like, this is my life. It was horrible. I'll never do it again. 2, maybe 3. And again, a lot of the females that I'm breeding to now are smaller. They're not giant. They're 13, 14, 15 foot. So I'm not expecting 50, 60 egg clutches from these girls. So it's just, I just want to make it smaller, more streamlined, and just, I don't know. I'm just trying not to put a lot of retics out in the market. I'm trying to do what Aubrey's doing. I want to do very minimal, but very high end is what my goal, my ultimate goal is. Just super like triple recessive, quad recessive stuff that takes forever to raise up, and hit those one of a kind animals, and just keep those one of a kind animals back and raise them. And I don't know. The days of making, I don't know how some of these guys do it. I mean, I'm friends with all of these guys, all of the breeders, right? And I don't know how some of these guys are doing 10, 15, 20 clutches of snakes. Boggles my mind. I don't know how you even move all those animals, and I know
that's my concern. Like, where do those animals go? Because my thing is, and I said this recently on a video I did, if there's not enough responsible keepers, why breed to that level? Like,
right. Well, and I think we talked about this, or it was on a post about the calling, right? Wasn't that?
Yep.
Didn't we talk?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily an advocate for culling, but I do think it has its point, its place, especially with the big snakes, because it's hard. It's, you look at these snakes, they can live 30, 40 years, right? It's like, what are you going to do with all these normal pos head stuff or triple pos heads? It's hard to sell those snakes, so it's like, you're either going to sell them to somebody that shouldn't have it, or even if you sell it to somebody that takes care of it, they may get tired of it and sell it to somebody that shouldn't have it. So now that snake's in a home where it's being mistreated, it's not being fed, or it's being fed too much, and it's a bad situation, so it's almost like it's a better scenario for that animal instead of being tortured, I guess I don't know, mistreated.
What is the process though? Like, so
I mean, everyone's got their own way of doing it, right?
I know a lot of at an egg, like, so this is the egg, and I see that it's a certain animal, deformed animal, whatever.
So I'm not going to get graphic, but I've once I pull babies out and I kind of sex everything and figure out what I have, because obviously, even when you start selling, like, let's say a male, let's just say like even a male normal het pied, that's a harder snake to sell than a female normal het pied, right? A male normal, right. Just a normal het pied. So if you end up with like 7 males and 2 female hets, it's going to be hard to move seven males. So you might call a few and end up with like a 2.2. That's what I do. That's my mentality. Now, I haven't been into the position where I've had to call a ton of babies. I have a few here or there when I was very heavy with like my possum blonde stuff. But I put them in the once I call them, they're in the freezer, and I use them for my monitor. I've given them to friends that have king snakes, so they're being used. It's not like they're going to be killed and tossed in the garbage. And I don't know if that's the issue a lot of people have is they have this.
So I think for me, I'm like, what does that process look like? Because as like right now, and when I have a egg that's infertile, it automatically goes to the monitor.
Right, absolutely.
If I haven't had it yet, but if I had a deformed animal, which I've had one, but it's able to eat and everything, so I didn't have to, go that route. So my thing is from the way that it was presented, it sounded like we was just having these babies and just, disposing of them. And I'm like, okay, are we recycling, the life,
Well, yeah, and I think that's the thing. I don't know if people are thinking about it that way. Like, are they just killing the babies and throwing them in the garbage? And which, right. I mean, that's terrible. That's an absolutely horrible thing to do. Even though part of me thinks like that could be better than some of the lives that these super low end animals are going to end up with. Like realistically. But I mean, yeah, like I again, I don't call a ton of stuff. I usually sell most of my stuff, but yeah, I mean, I'll feed it to the monitor. Now that the monitor's getting bigger, he can eat baby retics and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's a weird thing because I used to be very against it. Like when I started my first couple clutches, I'm like, oh, why would anybody want to do this? And there was some of the older guys telling me about it, and and that was when the market was a lot better than it is now. And now it's harder to sell mainlands, especially. So, yeah, it's I don't know. We are okay with people breeding feeders, right? Rats and rabbits and pigs and whatever, and they kill them for food. I don't know why there's a big issue with doing it with snakes, realistically.
Well, I think for me, right, with the thought process is the rats go to the snakes. So it makes more sense. I mean, like if you have to, what you're saying, you know what I'm saying, it makes more sense. But that was my question. Like, well, what are you like? Are we taking these? And like, I don't have a problem with, someone saying I have monitor food, or cobra food, because people ask me all the time, like, if you have any babies who don't make it or anything like that, let me know, ship them to me for my cobra. I for me, that's better. You know what I mean? It's actually helping.
You're continuing that circle of life, right? I mean, everything's got to eat, and some animals eat baby retics. It's just natural. It sucks. I hate it. I mean, so for example, I used to feed rabbits exclusively, right? So I would go and pick up my rabbits, and they were live, and I had to kill them and bag them and feed them by hand. It broke my heart to do. Like I had a friend come and help me because he needed some, and I'm like, I'll do it. We'll go get them, but you're helping me because one, I'm like super allergic to them. So like handling them and stuff and all the fur, I was like, I'd be done for like the weekend. I couldn't do anything. I'm just so sick. So it broke my heart. It was the worst thing ever, but everything's got to eat, and then, you post about it, people post about it, and it's like, oh, all you guys care about is the whatever the morph is you're looking for. It's like, well, let's be real. Like, I would much rather keep some of the high-end stuff than 25 of these normals that aren't going to sell, or, you might only sell, even if you sell all 25 of them, maybe one's going to make it to adulthood realistically, or two, maybe. It sucks to say, but that's real. That's what's going to happen. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had people call me that haven't bought a snake from me, and they're like, I got to get rid of this retic. I don't know what to do. It's like, well, did you talk to who sold it to you? Oh no, he won't answer my calls. So it's like, what happens to that snake? I don't want to be responsible for that. I don't want to put out, and that's where I think breeding, people need to be conscious of what they're breeding, right? You're breeding 15 females. Why? Now all that, you're shooting for the one of one morph, for the whatever the high end morph is out of that combo. You might only make 2, but you got 60 eggs. What happens to the other 58 babies? So, there's a lot. I think there's not one answer for everything. I think a lot of things have to change. I think breeders need to be, we're never going to say you can only produce five clutches a year, but I think breeders need to really take a look at themselves and see, how many clutches they're producing, what's happening.
Analyze that.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of them because I've talked to some that are super against, I'll never kill any of my babies. I'll make sure they all get in homes. And I do think that those breeders need to also think about that, because again, the market is not there for all the babies being produced at all. So there's no right answer that's going to magically fix everything. There's a lot of issues in the retic community right now, and it's kind of scary, to be honest.
So when you say that, again, because I sit in my own little bubble, what are some of the issues that, we know one of the bigger ones, but we pay. But what are the issues outside of per animal neglect? We know we're dealing with that scenario, which I think that's either going to get better or is dealt with, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you froze up.
So I think I lost you.
Sorry, I don't know if that was me or you. Yeah.
I think it was both of us. Both of us started.
I was going to say, you froze up. I couldn't see you.
Okay. So what are some of the issues, like underlining issues that you think that we could do to improve? Like other than, we know mass production of these animals needs to stop. What else is you think we could do better?
Well, I think, one of the big things currently right now, one of the big issues is I feel there's like this huge divide. There's this big divide between the mainland guys and the super dwarf guys.
And the super dwarf. I hate it.
And I've seen it, and I felt it. I felt it happening for a while. And I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I really feel like that's killing everybody. I mean, I've heard through the grapevine of super dwarf guys that are talking crap on mainland guys just to boost sales, and I don't know how true that is. But I mean, I think that's a huge issue by itself. Is just they're all retics, so we should all come together and help each other out. And I'll be honest, I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I've talked smack on super dwarfs and stuff like that. I'm just as guilty as everybody else. So I think that's a huge issue. Obviously, like you said, the neglect and the overproduction is a huge deal. And I think just I don't know, I just feel like there's so much shadiness. Like when it comes to like the selling of them, so many people are just, they'll cut your best friend's throat, for a sale. I think that hurts everybody. Everybody knows everybody. So how are you going to do that to friends? I think that's a big issue.
Right.
I don't know. Just there's like I said, I don't know how we fix it. I don't know how we can. I think just as it's grown and more people are getting into the Retic community, it's getting harder and harder and harder. We've always had been behind the 8-ball or whatever the quote is, with being keepers of the biggest snakes. But we had such a small community, we almost kind of flew under the radar. Now there's so many people. I mean, think about it. Behind ball pythons, it's probably Retics are probably the next most popular pet snake out there, which is crazy when you really sit down and think about it. We have a lot more eyes on us now. So
right now, anyway.
And it's only getting bigger. So I don't know. I think just the main thing is that we got to come together. We got to work together and try to. I don't know. I'll be honest. I really don't know what we can do to fix it. It's. I wish I knew, because if I knew, I would push it.
Well, I think one of the things that's evident is like, I think you and the team are changing the tone. Retic Nation is whether you guys know it or like it, is one of the first places that most new keepers are going to go. Right. I mean, it's one of the first Facebook groups you're going to see.
It's like the largest Retic group out there,
Right.
And that means a lot to me. Like, I love, like, I put it in my post. I love that group, right? I mean, like you said, you didn't know I was an admin. Me and Shane created that page. I mean, in my post, I said, like, we were sitting there in his living room or in his kitchen. We were talking to Gavin, because Gavin started the site, right? Gavin started reticnation.com, the forum page. And everything was kind of transitioning to Facebook. And I remember sitting there with Shane, and we were talking like, dude, we should start a Facebook group for the nation. Like, we should get that going. And we started, he put it together and we started it. And that's been since 2011. So, I mean, you figure the nation has been, I'm on the nation hours each day. And think about that, since 2011, every day I'm on Retic Nation, every day. So it means a lot. That page means more to me than I ever thought a Facebook group would ever mean to me, right? I don't know. It means so much. So when I hear people say when I hear people like talk crap on it, like it hurts it breaks my heart, because I love that page. I remember what it was.
Like, it was a place that I when I first came, I would post, and then I was like, these are not my people. But it was because people would be so mean, not to me personally, but to just people in general.
Well, I think
when you have all of this knowledge there, people should be 110% comfortable. So kudos to you guys, because I can tell you, in the last 60 days, you can see the shift in what people would even post in there, know?
And it's right now, it's hard. We're trying to, I feel like I have a responsibility now that I'm the most senior guy there. I've been there forever. I mean, all these other admins have been there, but I've been an admin since the creation of it. And I feel like it's kind of my responsibility to try to right the ship in a way, so I don't know how to do it. I'm trying. 15,000 plus members. It's a tough thing. And I'll be honest, a lot of the people that are on there that are talking crap and just are being mean, they probably don't even have retics, or they have one snake. It's not there's like probably in reality there's probably like a core 100 people, 150 people that I bet are true diehard retic people and breed, not even breed, but own multiple, are knowledgeable, the whole thing. I think the remaining of them are just, they have a snake and they think they know everything, or they've read about them and they don't even own them. It's just, that's the group where they can go on and flex their muscles and try to be knowledgeable and try to be somebody,
Right.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we love these animals so much. I think my biggest fear is I don't ever want to see you talk about the super dwarf in the mainland battle. One of the things that I try to post is to show people that these animals are very calm animals. They can be, right? We do know what they can be too, right?
Yep.
But I try to show people the better parts of them, which is my reality, because I don't have any unfavorable experiences with these animals. I respect them. I don't do things that would make them not love me or not not like me or things like that. I also cater to what they need and what they want constantly. That's just my goal every single day. I don't want to see mainlands go away. So one of the things that, and I know they won't go away, period, because you and I will have them and other people will have them. But
there's a lot of us out there.
Yeah, I still want to see the community grow, maybe slower, that there's still people who want to keep these animals, who can keep them efficiently their way. I don't have one, believe it or not, Jake, that's kept the same exact way. If you go to each enclosure, every last one of their setups are different. Some of them have nothing but paper because they seem to like that better and they respect it better for as excreting themselves. You got some that have half substrate, half paper, and then you got some has all substrate. It all depends on what they like, what they do. The ones who turn their bowls more got more substrate than the ones who don't.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's all figuring it out. It's trial and error.
Yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's no one way. And so when I hear that, I'm like, well, here I am sitting, or like if you for people who have 50 retakes, because I only have 10.
Yeah.
But for people who have 50 adult retakes, they will see even more of a variety of personality, right? And so what I say to people is that your snake is going to tell you how to keep them. And if your snake shows you that being in this 8x, 3x3 is not their cup of tea, then you try something bigger.
Yeah.
But like the person you talked about, Randy, for example, Randy put a retic in a bigger enclosure and ended up putting it right back.
Yeah.
The small enclosure.
So I mean, every zoo I've been to that has a big retic, they're always sitting in the corner of the cage, curled up. I mean, now, I'm sure at nighttime they're cruising around or they're doing whatever, but I don't know. I don't think they're not like a monitor where they need this giant enclosure where they're going to utilize. I mean, they might. A big retic might crawl around and use some of the stuff. But how often? Is it once a day? Like, are they just going to crawl around?
And they can do that
out to the corner? Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. I've never been there. I would love to go to Indonesia and actually see them in the wild and see what they do. I think that's really the only way we'll really, really know. But I'm just curious how active they really are in the wild, especially the bigger ones. I feel like the bigger ones are.
They probably moving.
I truly feel like the bigger ones are more sedentary than I think we believe. I mean, yes, I think, can they climb trees? Yeah, absolutely. Do they swim? Yes, absolutely. But I think that they're hanging out and they're trying to eat. I really truly believe in my heart that they're sitting by game trails waiting for a big meal to come by to eat. And then they're going to sit there and digest it for a month or however long. You ever see those ones where they're just insanely huge? Like, they're going to sit there for a month and digest, and then they're going to want something else to eat. So, I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I have no problem admitting that. But I don't know. Just watching what my animals do, I find it hard to believe that they're active constantly, like cruising and climbing and doing this and doing that.
I have cameras on mine. Like you say, you might get some that's active at night. But I find that if you let them, if I let them out, like say, if me and you wasn't doing this, they would be out right now, right?
Yeah.
They go in and they will literally take position until we start moving around again tomorrow. And I know that because they all like literally the cameras are on them, and if they move at all, the camera goes off, right? So I think that's a good thing too. I always tell people, not just with the retics, but with your monitors too. Like having cameras on it and really see what they do when you're not around is how you really figure their personality out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've had a few get out. Luckily, not a lot, but I've had a few get out. Decent sized animals, 9 feet, and I always find them curled up in some super tight, dark corner. Always, they're never just crawling around the floor. They're always tucked up in some tight area. So it's like that. Just in my mind, that just kind of feeds more into what I truly believe. But it's the cameras though, like you said, are a great thing. I have them placed all over my room too, so it's definitely good. If you have a few animals, it's great to have cameras in your animal room. For sure.
Absolutely. For multiple reasons, safety, security. But like I said, I just like when the mom was gravid, I didn't have to interrupt her. I could just watch everything through the camera. So when she started laying, I knew she was laying. I didn't have to come here and I had the little
mess with her.
Mess with her, anything like that. Because and that was one of the things that I don't remember. Somebody on a video said, when a mom is laying, especially reticulated, it could be one of the podcasts that you and Jim was doing. Yeah, and they were saying that don't, put that camera in front of them because they can get egg bound. Like you can make them stop laying. They can become defensive and to stop laying. So I didn't want to do any of that, but the cameras told me everything. So when she was finished, I knew it was time to come pull and all that type of stuff from the camera. So we've been here. Well, I knew it was going to be some time, but
a little longer.
I do want to cover this particular question as much as we can. All right. So
absolutely.
I think that we talk about the educational piece, right? I talk about finding out, like, not knowing you was an admin of the Retic Nation, and although I'm always, was following you. Who are the admins of the Retic Nation?
Right now, it's me, Travis Warren, Weston Wenner, and Chris McVicker.
Oh, okay. So all people that I actually follow.
All good guys.
Okay.
All good guys.
Now my question is can the Retic Nation, like, can you guys as admins, y'all been here, you've been experienced. I know Shane is doing more on IG now, so that's good, right? He's showing way more on IG now. If we can get like the vets, and when I say the vets, it's just you guys, like the ones who've been doing this and still doing it. We have vets people who've been around who may not be doing it the best or in the direction that we want to see the reticulated python community go, but work together. I love your responses, even in the whole situation with all of the Wolf Market Bob Clark stuff. Like that's the type of guidance and leadership that we need in order for us to move forward. Can you guys start doing more like this, maybe like brief educational clips in the Retic Nation, maybe?
We actually talked about, I don't know if it was when Shane was still on in Aubrey, but we did talk about like doing, like, it would be nice if we could get like all the admins to do a group video and we could discuss stuff, or like kind of do like I know Noah and I think it was Jim or somebody had their Retic roundtable, but almost do like a roundtable discussion about maybe current events or stuff going on in the Retic community, getting the admins together or stuff like that. We talked about it just briefly. So, I mean, I think that I agree. I do think that would be cool. I think that'd be good for us to, even if it's not all together, I think just trying. I mean, I'll try to do more educational stuff myself. I think it's needed. I mean, it sounds like it's wanted, talking to you.
I mean, I was amazed that I learned everything about ball python breeding right from YouTube. Everything else from Retic, I had to pull, you even down to message you like, hey, why can't I see the veins in these eggs? And you're like, well, they're Retic eggs.
super thick shells. Give them time; they'll show up.
I'm like, something's wrong because you can see them in a ball python.
It's all learning. It's all the learning, and like you said, it's all that education. It's, to me, I've been doing it so long, it like makes sense to me, right? So like, I guess I forget too. Like hey, what's up with these? Well, it's big thick egg. What do you like they're thick eggs. Like, what do you expect's gonna, But yeah, I guess
all kinds of lights to it too. I'm like, I'm looking at all kinds of lights.
Yeah.
It's not that you can just ask somebody.
And I started doing that on my YouTube page a little bit. I was trying to do like the Retic 101 or something. I think is what years ago when I did like setting up a new cage, and I was showing people how I set up my cages with my heat pads and my thermostats and this and that. And I had a lot of good people respond to that. Like, I was surprised that a lot of people liked that. But
my best YouTube videos is on Retic handling. Like on all the stuff I do. When I do one on Retic handling, and I can do that. Like husbandry, I can do that. That's become my expertise. But if you're talking about like breeding questions or like even down to I use my ball python knowledge to take care of the hatchlings. The only difference was the hatchlings really came out the egg.
Yeah, they're ready to go too as soon as they come out. I've never hatched ball pythons, so I don't know what baby ball pythons are like. So
so they're nothing like me. So first, one of the funniest things is ball pythons take forever to crawl out. So even if they ship, they take forever to crawl out. Where the retics is like, I'm here today, I'm out tomorrow. Even one day, one of them got out of the box and was sitting on top of the box in the incubator. I'm like, oh my God.
Holy God. That sounds like a retic for sure. I've had that happen once or twice before I got these new bins. That doesn't happen now, but my old bins it did.
Yeah, so it taught me not to use the same bins that I use for ball pythons for reticulated pythons. Because it was clearly just sitting there like, where you been? Like, you didn't see me out the box. It was so much fun, but I love these animals. I appreciate you, and even like our candid conversations. Like I would say, like, I love the respect that I do get from people like you.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so many, Lucas, there's so many people who just really been doing this. They're great at doing it. They're trying their best to help everyone. But I think that it's a big, you said it, is a big difference between how that information is exposed in the ball python community. And it could be people resistant to what other people's going to say. But I'm going to say to everybody, you guys been doing it. You've been doing it a long time. You've been doing it successfully. Put the information out there because...
Well, that's the thing, like I'm very, at work too, like, somebody asked me for my advice about something. I've been at my job for 20 plus years. I have 20 plus years of experience. So I give my response to their question. And then if they don't listen to my response, it's almost like a slap in the face. Like, I have 20 years. You're not going to, I've seen a lot. I've seen most of the stuff you're going to see. Right. So why wouldn't you take my advice? So don't ask me for advice if you don't want my answer. It's wasting my time almost, my time is limited. I could be helping somebody that actually truly wants to listen to me. And if you don't want to listen to me, that's totally fine too. But it's just, I don't know. As I've gotten older, that's kind of a big thing with me lately. The last 2 years, it's like time is so limited, and you only have so much of it that why waste my time if you're not going to listen to me? I have no problem helping anybody and everybody, but at least listen to me and take some of the things I'm saying and apply them, and not just complete. Because that's one thing that drives me nuts is give advice and they don't even nothing. Like, it's just in one ear out the other. That it just drives me nuts. Like I said, work too does the same way. So,
Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate you spending the time with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's my most important thing. I think that we need more education, not just for whatever the expertise.
Yeah.
If it's Jake and his mainlands and it's Eric and his super doors, whatever, we do need to make sure that. And I say it all the time. Retic is a retic, and experiencing even with mainlands. I have a purple sunfire who is the same size as my dwarf. Like, and she was fed like I would raise any other animal. Just for whatever reason, she's not 14 feet. Like,
genetics. Why some people are 7 feet tall and some are barely 5 feet. It's
right.
Genetics are huge.
I think that, like, even that dialogue, like, when we start to talk about if we're going to compare certain things, mainlands, and let people know that you could have a beautiful mainland that doesn't fit 15 feet. In fact, have you ever seen, how many times have you seen in captivity a mainland more than 20 feet?
I've seen a handful. I've seen, I've been to Bob's, so I've seen Bob has some big snakes.
Right.
I've been to Jay's. I've handled Twinkie when Twinkie was alive. So, I mean, I've seen probably all the big, not all, but a lot of the big famous retics. Like I said, Jim Gaspar had a giant tiger that was, oh man, she was 20 or 21 feet. She was huge. But the biggest snake I ever saw was my buddy Chad. He lives up in Wisconsin, and he had a Sulawesi from, he got it from Nerd as a baby, or a very young animal, and he raised this thing up. And it was the biggest. It was humongous. I mean, I've seen a lot of big snakes. Like I do think Twinkie, that Jay's was bigger around, fatter.
Okay.
But lengthwise, I mean, we couldn't get the Sula out because she's so big. And he only had like 6 retics, but every retic he had was giant. But this, I mean, he had like an 18, 19 foot super tiger, and this snake dwarfed that snake. I would say 22, 23 feet legitimately. Okay. It's huge. The head on the snake was massive. You know, he had it in a vision cage, which obviously was way too small for the snake. And he was in the process of having Centec build him, I think, a giant, huge cage. But the snake got out of the cage because the way he transferred it, he had a vision cage that he would use as a holding cage. And he would literally just slide the cage open and kind of take the hook and shoo the snake into the empty vision. And then he'd close it and clean the snake's cage out. The snake was so big and strong that it flexed it and just bent the vision cage and got out. And his room, like I said, was small, 10 by 10 or 12 by 12, very small room. And he said that snake could strike from anywhere in the room and hit you. Like, that's how big this animal was. So it was a monster. The head on it was by far the biggest retic I've ever seen. The head was huge.
Yeah, it's so funny. One of my biggest is one of the ones that people claim wouldn't get the biggest. It's my Motley Golden Child Sunfight. She has Golden Child. She won't get that big. She was 10 feet in the first year.
I've seen some huge Golden Childs. I'll have to send you. I don't know if you ever saw the picture. One of the first times I went up to see Gavin, he had this was still when Golden Childs were super rare, but he had a huge one from Kevin. Giant. I want to say that snake was 17, 18 feet. I'll send you the picture. Okay, I got her. Me holding her. She's like draped on my shoulders, and she's all the way. She's huge. She was huge snake. It's big. I mean, the genes though too. Like everyone says, blonde is big. You know, blonde. A lot of the blonde stuff is huge. My biggest snake right now is my blonde tiger. Okay. She's 19.8, 19.6, somewhere around there. So she's a big snake. But yeah, I don't. It's like anything. Like you said, you have a 7-foot person or a 5-foot person. It really, I don't know. Luck of the draw.
And then what was one more other thing that I thought would be a great idea for Tinley? Maybe, nothing crazy, but maybe we do something where all the retic keepers get together and kind of brainstorm, like even if it's just 30 minutes, like get together, brainstorm over things we can do over the next year to kind of improve the educational.
Well, I will say a lot of the retic people do get together. Typically, we usually go out for dinner, and then we usually all end up.
Invite. I've never been out with all the retic people.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. We do our own thing. We're the retic people are the outcasts. We do our own thing, right? So but we usually do. We usually go out for dinner, and then usually end up back at that bar at Tinley, the one in the hotel. We usually all end up there, but it's usually always the retic people at one big table all hanging out. So,
last year was the first time I think that I literally got to see more of you guys than normally. The year before that, I just think I was just so tired after the auction. I didn't get a chance to hang out much. But I just think that we need to be more of the community that the ball python community is.
So we talked about it at one of the, I don't know if it was the last Schaumburg or if it was the last Tinley, but I know there was some talk about everybody, all the retic people, like pooling their money together and trying to convince Brian Potter to get us a Retic Nation table at the auction.
Oh, okay. That would
be nice. Show a little like, hey, this is our community. Like, we want to be a part of it, not be pushed to the back. And
there you go.
So I don't know what it would. I don't know what it would take. I should actually reach out to Brian and ask him what it would cost for us to get our own table. So at the auction and see if anyone's interested. But maybe. Sure.
That would be nice. That would be a nice way to unify even the whole.
At least it would show us like, hey, we're serious. We want to be a part of this. Like, we want to be. Because I feel like we get looked at like, I don't know. I just feel like the ball python people, the monitors, everyone else looks at us like a bunch of nutcases, especially with everything going on.
We're the weirdos of the weirdos.
We're the weirdos of the weirdos for sure. We are definitely the outcasts in the reptile community. I feel like. I think the only ones that have it worse than us are venomous people. Honestly.
Oh
Venomous
yes,
people probably
but
have
you
it worse
know
than
what?
us.
I think venomous people for the most part get a bad rap because
Yeah.
they also probably one of the most like controlled and actually responsible keepers. Well, you gotta be.
You have to be. You can't make a mistake if you're messing with some of that stuff. So, but yeah, I think I like those. I will definitely have to chat more. You know, if you come up with any ideas and stuff.
I just want so much more for the reputation of these animals. By far, I wish I had gotten into them earlier in my life, but what kept me away for a long time was just thinking that it was impossible, from everything that you saw, especially the earlier videos, like literally. And then there are also some images of retics out there that just shouldn't exist. I think that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I will say, like, I do find a lot of the pictures, like the bite pictures and stuff. They shouldn't be out there, but sometimes I wish they could be, just because.
Educationally, right?
When you see some of these bites and you're like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't get that. If that can happen to me, maybe I should not have that animal. Like, if that scares you away, then maybe you probably weren't meant for the retic.
It should be done in an educational setting, right? And that's again, that's what I'm saying, like where. Because what it is that you got these fools who, who think it's something to show off.
Oh,
and that's what it is. But educationally, yes, you need to see what it, like I can tell you for me, I saw a very graphic picture of a real bite that sent someone to surgery from a adult reticulated python. And it's that image, like that really makes me remind my son all the time, Michael, just remember they still apex predator. Don't be people to just go in there like that and that type of stuff. So one of the Tinleys,
Jason Gaspar, that's Jim Gaspar's son, was walking around one of the shows, and he just got a real bad bite from not even a big snake. It was a fairly small, 10, 11 feet, and his hand was all wrapped up. He just had like 2 or 3 surgeries from a retic, and he didn't post the pictures, but I saw him, and it was to imagine. I mean, a 10, 11 foot retic is not a big snake. I mean, they're that big around. It's not that big of an animal. The amount of damage that it caused him. I mean, it's good for people to know. I mean, even me, and at that point I had many years of keeping it. It still is like, wow, like really thinking about it, like it's crazy what an animal like that can do and how lucky you are to not get lit up like that and hurt by one of these. It's part of it's the cool factor too. Like they can cause that much damage, but they trust you and are comfortable enough with you that it doesn't happen. Hasn't happened yet.
So that's why I always say is to take a special level of a person to create that loyalty and respect, because that's where you have the best relationships with those retics, when they just honestly, it's a trust thing. It's like a mutual trust thing. I trust you, you trust me, but I also keep in mind to like you said, you never know what mood that animal might be in. One of the real big things that I always try to be conscious of when I'm handling mine is make sure they move first, so I can determine they move. Like I would never just go in there if they sleep.
Yeah.
Because I have some who will wake up and be fine. There's other ones like that golden child. You're definitely going to probably be wrapped up.
Gonna give you a big kiss on it. Gonna give you a big kiss and hug.
Yes, she has so much. She's one of my favorites, but she's the one I've always respected the most.
Yeah.
Because she taught me about all the others, because she was my first one.
Yeah.
And as we sit here, she just sat here and just put the biggest effort. I have to clean after. I'm like, did you really? It was nice and clean in there. Which is another thing. I tell people, you have to be committed to clean constantly when you have multiple retics, right?
It never ends. It never ends. I was out of town for a week, and I usually have my sister will sometimes come by, and she won't open anything, but she'll like check the big snakes for me, and just to make sure nothing like is flipped a water bowl or any of that sort of stuff. And she went with me, or she went out of town with us, so like I had nobody to check. But when I got home, it was a disaster. I mean, I didn't even I planned it out. Like I don't feed anything for like 2 or 3 weeks before I go on vacation, just to make sure everybody's empty and nobody's got food in them. It's still a disaster. Water bowls flip, just paper crumpled in a corner, pee and poo, and they crawl. It's just, I mean, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. That's why, like you said, I don't know how people can do it with hundreds. Some of these guys have hundreds of retics, and couldn't do it.
I couldn't even imagine. I could never have any. Like even now, like I could have more, which keep me from getting them. Is that I can't have more.
Yeah. When I went to Bob Clark's, that's when Jeff Byers, right? Or Jeff Byers. Yep. So Jeff was still there, and he's like, it's like painting a bridge. You start cleaning at one end, you work your way to the end. By the time you get to the end, you got to start back over again. It's. I mean, if you have a crew of people, it wouldn't be that hard. And Jay's is the same way. The amount of people that work there to take care of those animals is.
Yeah, but then that's when you get into having to trust other people.
Right, and then you lose that one-on-one relationship with those animals, which is something. I mean, I would never want. I would, when I was younger, I always wanted to do that, be the Bob or Jay or whatever. Now I'm like, nah, I want to be able to handle all my stuff. And I'm at that point where it's like, that's where I said I'm going to start slimming down because it's almost too much. But I want to get back to just being able to handle everything every day if I wanted to. So.
All right. Yeah. What is your favorite morph? I should know, right?
Ooh, I don't know. It changes a lot. So right now I love the ocelot. I'll be honest with you. Ocelot is amazing.
I love it too.
It's so new.
If Aubrey just give me one, that would be better.
So new and it's so killer, and it's just for a single gene, it's crazy. But I'm really liking the hypo stuff a lot right now because I invested a lot into that, a couple of years ago, and I think that's going to be a big. I think it's going to be a really big thing for the retic community. It's hard. I'm a blonde. I like the blonde stuff just because I like that because no one else likes it. I'm like one of the very few guys. Pieds are insane. Pieds are crazy, but I don't know. It's hard to pick one. Me and Aubrey have a breeding, which I think is going to be, to me, probably the end all, my personal end all be all retic, and that's he's got my Anthrax Tiger, and she just ovulated, and that's from a Indo Caramel Ocelot. So we're hoping, obviously there'll be triple heads. So the end game is a Tiger, an Indo Caramel Anthrax Ocelot is going to be, I think that thing's going to be just on another planet. Anthrax and Ocelot, I think, are going to be two of the best combos.
Yeah, the Indo and Caramel is nice too.
Indo Caramel's insane. So I don't know. I can't pick one. Anthrax. I'm known for my Anthrax stuff. I'm known for Phantom. I don't know. That's hard to pick one.
See, mine will always be visually the cow.
Cow's insane.
I love my Golden Child cow, but I love the Golden Child, period.
Yeah. Golden Child was like the first. That was like the biggest. I mean, I remember when the Nerd first produced it, and it was like the crazy. I mean, at the time, nobody could have ever imagined anything like that, And I remember when I got my first golden, or my first GC. It was a lavender albino GC, and at the time they were like 12 or 15 grand when I got mine, and just seeing that snake in person, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. Like it didn't even look real. So, and then you fast forward, and then it's the cows, and it's like, what is this? Like,
right? The
cows are crazy. I mean, that's what invests. So I bought the first and only male Platinum Phantom at the time. So it was the first ones that Kevin hatched, and they hatched two males. I bought one male, and then the other male went overseas. So once I knew that the Phantom could make the cows, I ponied up the money, and I got the first male Phantom in the country, so that they released.
But it's very hard to hit that, right? To the odds.
At the time, the Phantom's an incomplete dominant. So at the time when they bred it, I think, if I remember correctly, I don't remember exactly what the breeding was. It was like it was like an ultra ivory or something to a Phantom or something like that, and and then they made the Phantoms, and because they thought the wild-caught Phantom and the wild-caught OGS originally looked like the same snake. So I think that's what it was. I think they bred the first two wild-caughts together, and they made the blue-eyed Lucies, which they didn't understand how that worked. And then they bred like the Phantom out to figure out that it was a different morph. It was a incomplete dominant, not a recessive. So, I mean, that would have been crazy to just do that. Imagine these two snakes that look the same from the wild and you make a white snake. It's crazy.
Exactly.
So, but
exactly.
yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I appreciate this. Has been
Yeah.
really, really good. Hopefully we can see some of the positive changes, and hopefully we will see progress and not digress, and the overall perception of the reticulated python. But I do appreciate everyone. I appreciate you. Definitely, when I reach out and I have a question, just always being responsive.
Anytime.
I think that's important. That's really important. I definitely give credit to, everybody who, when I had my breeding questions that was not available, on YouTube and things like that, just being so kind and helping me get my animals here safely.
Yeah.
And I just hope that we can see more educational, like I said, even if it's just little snippets on IG, even if it's a minute, like a tip of the day or whatever, I think it will help people, first of all, realize that these animals can be manageable with the right education behind it.
Definitely. I agree. Couldn't agree more. So,
yeah. But thank you. I'm going to, we're going to go ahead and end the broadcast now. Jake, stay right there with me for 1 second.
Alrighty.
Everybody, thank you for joining us. Perfect broadcast. I knew it would be. It's my passion. When you talk about retics, this can go on for another hour, but we got to end it now. We hope everyone have an amazing day and see you soon.
Bye. Thanks.